Gum trees are a feature of so many Australian landscapes. With over 900 species and a wide range of smaller varieties and cultivars, you don't have to live on a large property to enjoy them. But just like any large tree, eucalypts can dominate, and it can be a challenge to grow a garden underneath. They'll compete for nutrients and water and light, and some even release chemicals that inhibit the growth of other species around them. But there are some plants that will survive, and the best place to start looking for them in those species that have evolved in similar conditions. Here in Karwarra, in Melbourne's Dandenong Ranges, is one of Victoria's best native gardens, Karwarra Australian Plant Garden and Nursery. They've got lots of successful gardens under a range of different trees. This is a pretty serious tree for a gardener to contend with. It's Eucalyptus cinerea, and you can see it's incredibly established. But underneath are a smorgasbord of different species, lots of different forms, and some of my absolute favourites. I think the Croweas are a really underused group of Australian plants. There's a few species and, of course, many cultivars. This one is a compact form that's a hybrid of the two. And they're fantastically fresh and gorgeous looking plants. And, of course, these beautiful clear flowers are really, really stunning. They're produced in the cooler months. But one thing that I think is so good about them in a situation like this is that they're actually better in light shade. Not many of them will want to be out in the baking sun, and under a eucalypt, it's not that heavy shade that is often cast by a big, thick European tree. It is actually that kind of dappled light. So these are a fantastic choice for growing under gums. I'm also a massive fan of the wax flowers, the Philotheca. And there's a number of species from arid areas and also some from that moister east coast. So they're really, really adaptable to lots of garden conditions. Now, they have, of course, these gorgeous little wax flowers. But one thing that I love about them is, as members of the Rutaceae family, related to things like citrus, they also have incredibly fragrant foliage. So as you brush past it in the garden, you'll get a whack of that. And of course, pruning it, tip prune regularly to keep it nice and compact, you get to enjoy that fragrance too. Another great genus to consider for growing under gums are the Pomaderris, and many of them have evolved as understory shrubs right up to small trees. And this one is a cultivar. It's a really compact form of Pomaderris obcordatus. Of course, you get this great foliage, a lovely form, and then these beautiful clusters of flowers. Now, in the wider range of species, they vary all the way from whites through into bright yellows, and they have incredible foliage colour as well. So I reckon that's a group that often is overlooked, but is really worth giving a go. One tip is to avoid anything that is too delicate, because over time debris does fall from the sky. Eucalypts will drop things like bark and leaves intermittently throughout the year, and if it's too deep it can smother small plants. Now things like this, it's a lamandra and dianellas, things like that are really, really good at coping with all of that debris. Even if a large branch falls on them, you can remove it and they'll recover. So avoid anything that is too brittle or anything that's tiny and precious. Once you've chosen your plants, there's of course a little bit of technique to really setting them off on their path. And there's a few things you should always do. One is to plant in the milder months of the year. So that might be anywhere from autumn right through winter into early spring if you live in a particularly cold place. It's always a good idea to start with a small plant. It reduces the chance of that transplant shock, and this is really important here. So I'd start with tube stock if you can, or at a maximum that 150mm size. It's also important to position them well. You can go quite close to a trunk because the water will actually roll down that trunk and create a nice little environment. So you just want to have a bit of a fish around to find a spot that is not too congested with roots, no major roots, and then that's where you're going to plant. The soil here is absolutely amazing. And then dig the hole about 2 or 3 times as wide as your pot is, because you want the root system to go out. And then get your little plant, upturn, gentle tap on the bum, little squeeze, and it should come out beautifully. So I'm just putting a little depression around that as I backfill and bring that mulch back over, because I want the water to be directed to the roots in summer. It'll be really dry. And then hopefully this little phibalium, it's a gorgeous shrub, have its perfect life under this gum. If you want to add some vibrancy and nutrients to your garden, you can't go past the holly flame pea. This is Corozema lisifolium. It is such a gorgeous plant. So many people want to grow it, and it is a really beautiful flower. It's this bright orange with pink in the centre. My colleague used to call it unicorn vomit, which I think is pretty apt actually. It's a great common name. So being a pea, they actually have relationships with soil bacteria which help them to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere in their roots. They give themselves a free feed, which means they're really great at growing underneath the competition of other plants. So I think any pea is worth a go if you want something to grow under a gum. Little Philotheca timifolia, such a beautiful little plant. I hope it goes well. Sometimes gardening is really easy. You've got all the options, you can grow anything you want. But other times it is a challenge. But I promise, if you choose the right plants, you put them in at the right time, and you give them a little extra TLC, you can grow a gorgeous garden under gums.